back to the Zoom meeting, and
There's
there are
Jackie.
3 people waiting. Admit all. The Zoom meeting, and
There's Jackie.
3 people waiting. Admit all. The Zoom meeting, and
There's Jackie.
oops, 3 people waiting. Admit all. There.
Glad to see you back, Jeremy.
Yes, welcome back, Jeremy. I'm not fond of the echo that Blair's doing,
I
but
just got rid of it. It's just
thank
when I
you. Okay, so welcome, Jeremy. I'm glad you're back.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Becky and Tim are there.
You too, and Becky. Hey, Tim and Becky, good to see you.
Sorry, we had a little Zoom snafu today for some reason. I think we've got it all dialed in.
Oh, good. I have one too.
Hey, Christine, good to see you. It's been a bit. Leslie, Jeremy, Colin, Shane, Jackie's on. Wonderful.
And Brent will be late. He did let me know. So he is coming, but he's late today.
Since we usually wait for him to get started, it was nice of
Yeah,
him
we
to
do.
let us know.
It was really, really nice. Yes. Very appropriate.
Very thoughtful.
Yes.
So, Blair, are we ready to get started?
I think we are. We're up and going and everywhere. So, and no echo right now. So that's a good thing. So yeah, let's start
Okay,
it
Tim,
out
you
here.
wanna get us going?
Sure, I can kick us off. So, all right. Well, it's great to see some old faces, new faces. This is awesome. Welcome everybody to the 320th episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience, where we discuss mind models. Mind models are a collection of extensively tested thought frameworks, skills, and behaviors that enable people to transform their lives intentionally. They have been tested and proven to be 80% effective when applied consistently versus mindset, which is only 1% effective. Your host for this evening is Blair Dunkley, the creator of Mind Models. The BDE is Blair's gift, free gift to you. We are Tim and Becky Graff, your co-hosts and certified mind model coaches, along with Patty McClurg. My models have helped us in every area of our lives, not only in business, but personally, resolving an 8-year issue in our marriage within just a couple of hours, to the navigation of grief with PTSD as well from a tragic accident when we lost our girls in 2020. My models have allowed us to be more effective and increase our capacities and speed of recovery without traditional counseling. So again, wanted to welcome everybody tonight. It's great to see some old faces that are back and some new faces on. So welcome everybody to tonight's Blair Dunkley Experience. If you're catching us on YouTube or later on Facebook, please like, comment, and subscribe. And again, the Blair Dunkley Experience is every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain or 9 p.m. Eastern. So we love it if you share and let your friends know so that we have more people join us. So welcome everyone.
Thank you, Tim. Blair, did you want to talk a little bit about your study guide?
Yes, I do. I have a study guide that I've put together. Um, I'm offering that to people here, and it is quite a wonderful, effective document for going through the guiding principles of effective communication, which is what we're covering in this series. Tonight is going to be going through root cause analysis. Now, going through all of this stuff, I'm finding a highly effective set of patterns, and the study guide gives you the ability to review what we talk about. It gives you notes and shared notes. It gives you all of the mind models that we have and that we bring up in tonight's program. And what we'll wind up doing is then it gives you a quiz with an answer key, as well as more information. And tonight I threw in a bonus section as well. So it's on the BDE, the Blair Dunkley experience. It is the study guide for here, and it's available for $25 a month. And that's the fee. If people are interested, Colin, I don't know if you could throw that link
He's
up.
already got it handled.
Oh, okay, great. That's so good. Thank you so much, sir. Yes, he does. There it is. And that gets you into that study guide. So that's the study guide, and I hope people will take advantage of it. That helps me find a way to promote the BDE, actually. And so I'm using that to monetize and raise some funds so I can spread the word. So, and hopefully if you find it useful and interesting, you might be able to purchase that so we can advertise and grow our exposure to more people. With that, I think I'm done, unless there's something else that you think I should add there, Patty.
No, I think you've got it covered. So tonight, as Blair said, we're covering root cause analysis, getting to root cause by asking questions, which applies to groups, whether business, family, or social groups. So looking at what is root cause analysis, it's a structured program for identifying underlying causes of a problem and then developing solutions to prevent it from happening again. From a mind model point of view, this is less than effective. So part of what we're going to do is run a compare and contrast between what is standard considered root cause analysis and then how Blair has modified this with my models. But the going back to identifying a problem and then to prevent it from happening in the future keeps you in a past future loop. It takes you out of the present, which is where all change and problem solving actually happens. So root cause analysis was developed in the early 19th century, which is the same time the mindset was developed. So we see a lot of those have just expired their usefulness and they're not as present, they're not as applicable or effective in present day time as they were when they were first created. So we're looking forward to sharing with you some of that. There was one of the processes within root cause analysis that got a lot of popularity is something called the 5 whys, which is the idea out of Japan. Sakichi Toyoda developed this, that if you just ask 5 successive why questions, you'll get to root cause. But are they really why questions? If any of you were around for Simon Sinek's, get to why, or what was that know your why something?
Yeah.
What was
The
that,
Golden
Blair?
Circle was his speech on YouTube. But
Yeah.
know your why.
Know
What-
your why. Yeah, thank you. So
Try and find your purpose.
in analyzing that, his whys were all disguised whats. And in analyzing Sakichi Toyoda's 5 whys, they're also disguised whats. So that gets us to precision questioning, which is Blair's alternative to the 5 whys. Tim, would you like to tell us a little bit about precision questioning?
Yeah, so the idea behind precision questioning is really getting more and more and more specific. And it's about following when you're having a conversation with somebody. It's about basically the ebb and flow of the conversation back and forth. It's a way of peeling that layer of that onion and getting more specific in, and it's very situational. It just depends on your conversation that you're having, and how the conversation is in flow. But the idea behind the precision questioning is getting more and more specific with the details, and where you want, let's see, how do I put this? Really getting to that root cause of what is actually going on. And so it's really just questioning a layer deeper. Um, well, yeah. Patty, do you have anything to add to that?
Well,
Or
I'm just wondering,
I-
Tim, how is it different from the general to specific thought funnel? Because we talked about that when did we do specific? Was last week.
That was last week, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So how is it different from going from general to specific with a thought funnel?
General to specific is kind of that surface layer. It's where the questioning process begins. But as the precision questioning is more of that process flow throughout the conversation, really dialing in. So it's how I guess the best way I can describe it is you have a bullseye that you're trying to hit, and you have that center bullseye. And with each one of those circles, you're getting closer and closer to that center that you're going for. The general to specific is part of that. It's that overall bullseye.
Mm-hmm.
Precision questioning is actually taking it from that first circle to the second circle and really dialing that in. That is where the precision questioning is really bringing that in. That's the best way I can think to describe it.
Thank you. Blair, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to sort of bridge it slightly differently and paint a slightly different picture. General versus specific is a great, like last week was very handy because things are general and we cannot change general things, but we can only change things when they're specific.
Mhm.
But when we get to the specific side of the of the scale here. So we're on the general side, can't do much. It's all this stuff out there, but we can't change much. Yet we jump over to the specific side and we're starting to do that. That's where precision questions jump in. That's where they start really working well because we're on the specific side, but it's not specific enough. So what we want to do is we want to create like general versus specific is a very, very basic, very fundamental sort of thought funnel. But the precision questioning is way more of a thought funnel and going from fairly precise to more precise, more precise, more precise. And that's where we get into thinking in terms of processes. Now, one of the things that happens here when we're going after root cause, and I've been in had a couple of companies, one in particular that I'm thinking of, that I was a management consultant for at the time, and they were a concrete block manufacturing company. And that concrete block manufacturer was had just gone through a bit of a transformation, which I was part of in hiring a new operations manager and helping him get on track. And he was already like well versed in what he did, an engineer in the field, all the papers, all the stuff that he needed to be able to do it, at least on the surface. Good information. Anyway, I'm just going to pop into that short. I'm going to try and keep it as tight as I can this time. It was a discussion I had with the operations manager when they had a part in the production line that was not operating up to specs. They could make things work. They could keep things sort of at spec, but we couldn't get full flow on the production line. So we were falling behind on volume. We were able to limp through, but that wasn't really good enough. Anyway, Robert was the manager that I was working with, and I went out with him and to talk to his people, and he wound up telling his team exactly what to do. So it was a big tell. Do this, do this, do this. We need the new part. You need to get it. You need to do da 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 da. Okay, great. So a week goes by, and my next time that I'm coaching Robert, I asked him, how did that go? It was all tell. And Robert was very frustrated this time, as he was with the first time. He was fairly frustrated, but telling everybody what to do in sort of a nice sort of way, but just telling. And this time, we went through this whole thing of him telling again, but this time he was yelling and telling. And, you know, he did more or less the same thing, expecting a different result, which we all know was a sign of insanity. And, you know, we go back the next week, the third week, the problem still isn't fully resolved. And Robert was saying that he didn't have time to ask questions. He could just tell them what to do and they could do it. And I went, okay, so you've had 2 weeks and, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever, of telling to your people. Do you mind if I go in and I sort of see what I can do to ask some questions? He said, you don't know anything. You're not an engineer. You're right. I'm not. I don't need to know anything about engineering because everybody in that place knows how to make these concrete blocks, correct? Oh, yeah, very well. They're really skilled. They've got, hundreds of years of experience between all of them. And the top guys have got like 20 to 30 years themselves. So, I mean, okay, that's 50 years right there. And there's lots of people in the plant. So I'm in safe hands. So let me go and ask. So I go in there and I start asking. And the funny thing was, I used precision questioning in that meeting. I started with asking them specifically, what is it? What is the problem? They answered. What is it that we need to do about this problem? They notice how doing something about it moves it from what it is to taking an action. Okay, now we're getting someplace. It's another thing that's specific. So what is that action we need to take? We need to order this part. Well, how come it hasn't been ordered? I was talking to, do we know what's stopping the order of the part? And the R&M manager spoke up and said, the manager, Robert, did not order the parts yet. And he yells back and said, it's not my job to order the parts. Anyway, traditional management in that case. And I said to the R&M manager, so now that you know that he hasn't, what might you do differently? Again, taking action, making it tighter and smaller. His thing was, he just got up immediately and walked out. I didn't know if he blew a stack, if he was pissed off or what. I had no clue. He didn't say a word. He just left. And I thought he could be in a huff. And I was thinking, oh my God, this whole thing of me asking questions has gone completely sideways. But I kept on asking questions. I said, once the parts come, what do you do next to the rest? Because I had the assistant to the R&M manager, the assistant manager of that department, and two of his teams. And they started brainstorming and coming up with an exact almost like a checklist of all the things that they need to do to lock off the equipment, make the repair, do all of these things, put it all in safely. And by the time they were finished with that listing of things, the R&M manager walks back in. And I asked him, are you okay? And he said, I am now. I just went to the PO office and to the office, purchasing office, and got a PO for the parts needed. And by the way, that office is right next door to Robert's. That's how come I thought Robert was going to do it, because the two offices had an adjoining wall. Anyway, so we make assumptions about issues, and more importantly, about people and the situation. Anyway, I'm going to jump here a little bit more into this, because one of the things that we notice when we do not have precision questioning, we run into a mind model, which is situation, people, process. And what we wind up getting into is a people, situation loop, and there is no process. So nothing happens. And that's what we had for 2 weeks. Yet, asking questions and specifically using precision questions broke it out. And by the way, the repairs were made in three days. And like it took a data order, a shipping day, and an install day. And in 3 days, they were up and back to full tilt. And 20 minutes of my time just asking questions to them, as opposed to 10 minutes each time Robert came in and yelled at them, and 2 additional weeks. So how much time does it really cost if you ask questions, and more importantly, precision questions, so you can get to root cause analysis? Becky.
Yeah, so as you were talking, one of the things that came up for me is precision questions provide clarity and alignment. It highlights the gaps so they can actually be filled in, so that you can be more efficient and effective. And it works in multiple layers. Blair's illustration of the concrete block company, everybody's head down doing their own thing. It required an opportunity to take a step back and ask the questions that were effective to identify where the breakdown in the process. And it's interesting, Blair, at that point, did they have a process identified? Like, did they even know that they had a process with like the chain of who did what? Was it identified at that point, or was that something that came out of that conversation with you?
It's something that came out of the conversation. Whose responsibility is it?
Mhm.
And that was not defined.
Mhm.
Mostly because Robert was new, and the previous manager who was there, he wouldn't let the R&M manager make any financial choices or decisions. So that wasn't discussed prior to that. Then afterwards it was. And the roles and responsibilities, we came up with a whole piece on roles and on its accountability, responsibility, and authority piece is a model that we use in rewiring the mind. And I came up with, because we have to know how these three components play. And if somebody has responsibility and accountability, but no authority, as the R&M manager thought, he didn't take action because he didn't have the authority to go place the order. He thought. But Robert thought he's the R&M manager, therefore he should. But there was no clarity, and nobody asked any questions because it was all tell and no precision questions. Does that answer your question there, Becky?
It does. I find it fascinating how often we behave on like tasks, but we don't have a clear we haven't identified our process in roles, responsibilities, as you were just talking about, and just how much that causes breakdown in communication because we make the assumptions and then we based on our assumptions and we don't ask the questions. And so this piece that we're talking about, precision questioning, like going after clarity and alignment, helps us get down to the, what Patty was talking about, the compare and contrast with root cause, like what is the issue? And then who owns that so the resolution can happen or there can be a path. So thank you.
You're welcome. One of the things that is usually ignored is, first of all, a simple question like, who owns the problem? Not whose problem is it, but who owns it? And if you own it, do you have the authority to fix it? Do you have the accountability and responsibility enabling you to move it forward? And if you don't, do you have the ability to connect with those people? Because if you don't, the whole thing's screwed right there, right then. It will fall apart, guaranteed. It's just a matter of time. Okay.
So Christine, may I ask you a question?
Of course you may.
I'm so glad to see you here.
It's very
And-
good to see you too.
So in your experiences dealing with different businesses, do you see the model of precision questioning being effective? Have you seen that pan out?
Have I seen it be effective?
Yeah, have you seen it be effective? Have you used anything like that in
Yes.
business things?
Yes, I use it quite a bit. I'd like to say I'm perfect at using it, but it's progress, not perfection. And so I really, matter of fact, as we're talking, Blair, I was like going, yeah, yesterday I had a negotiation with a guy and he was just tell for almost an hour. I think I got like a minute of conversation, of comments, and I was like, wow, I haven't experienced that in a while. I think the thing is that people intuitively, I think, understand that this is what they need to do. I think though that there's a lot of reasons why they just don't. I find that people who are much more accustomed and comfortable to being direct are more willing to ask questions that other people might not be willing to ask. And sometimes those questions make people a little uncomfortable. Whereas people who are much more focused on kind of keeping the peace or, being very, very inclusive all the time, sometimes that prevents people, I think, from getting to precision questioning because nobody wants to step on anyone's toes. And so I just experienced this today. I have a client and their startup, they're negotiating a deal with an investment banker. And just the way that the client is communicating, it's just like they're very helter-skelter, they're tripping over themselves. And then just as the deal was about to get signed, the banker comes back and says, oh, this definition is what I think this word means this. And that completely changes the whole conversation. But because there wasn't precision questioning from the executive team to this banker, we're left in a situation where we have some exposure. And so in my conversation with them today, I was like, we have to go back and we have to ask some very basic questions to understand what expectations are. In my work doing contracting and contract negotiations, I am a stickler on having everything be defined as much as possible so that it doesn't leave things open to interpretation as much. You can't define everything, but anything that's material has to be defined. And a lot of people don't do that. And that goes to precision questioning.
You mentioned something really interesting, Christine, that, that sort of thinking that tends to be uncomfortable with a direct question that is I don't have a name and label for that, but I ran into that same thing just in an attempt to get clarity. Sometimes I attend doctor visits with people who want an advocate because they have questions that they don't know how to get answered, and they don't know how to ask them, and they don't know how to understand the answer. So I sit in and I introduce myself, that is my purpose for being there, and intimidated. You think that the people there, Jeremy, tell me what you mean by that. Can you
Well, a few
elaborate?
sentences ago, you said something, I don't know what the word is, or you were kind of like,
Yeah.
getting somewhere. And I was thinking all these people are in common, including the people that work with Blair at the cement block factory, and the banker, and people who are advocating for people in hospitals, or people in hospitals that need advocating for. I don't know what the true definition of intimidated is, but timid is kind of like weakened and fearsome and not quite empowered. So we often use the word intimidated in the vernacular to mean someone who's like, not feeling empowered. And I felt like that was the energy of what you were speaking to. So I just put it in there to support you. I didn't know that you would ask me to explain it, but here I am.
Oh, yes.
By the
I'm
way,
always for a
Jeremy, good
question,
job.
Jeremy.
Yeah,
Did you
Jeremy.
say something, Blair?
Yeah, Jeremy, good job. Yeah,
Yes.
it's important to connect with that.
Yes. So I think intimidation is part of it. The interaction that I had was so curious to me. I almost felt like I was touching a culture that I didn't understand. When I took a woman, I was accompanying a woman who had had eye surgery, and she is legally blind, and they were taking cataracts off. And when you take cataracts off, they make usually one eye long, one eye short, and this kind of thing in terms of focus. And everything she does is on a computer. It's all up close. She's not driving, but she was unable to see after her surgery. So I went in and I'm asking, and there were two different doctors involved. One was a surgeon and one was the person who was the physician who was responsible for the post-op care and getting her vision to a place where she could use it. And so he just is starting right in. I said, excuse me, we have a question. Can you help us understand what happened with her vision? What is the reason that she's unable to see? And it's been several weeks after the surgery, and she is worse now than before the surgery. And he absolutely blew up. I'm going to walk out of here if you're going to talk to me like this. I just was gobsmacked. And I'm like, excuse me, we have a right to ask questions here. She has a right to know this information. Well, I will not be talked to like this. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a guy who very likely was in his 30s. This is not somebody who was, like centuries old like I am, but he was and the woman who was legally blind basically said, it's not okay that I can't ask my questions. It's not okay. I don't have any vision. I can't see. And I'm going to this guy saying, whose responsibility is it to help us with this question? And he darn near got up and walked out. And I'm looking at him saying, can you help me understand your response to a question? We asked a question and we're getting you wanting to walk out. Can you help me with this, because I'm not understanding what is going on here. Well, you're angry at me. I'm like, we asked a question, but again, you get that mind model, which is the ASK we talked about last week, that assumptions stop knowing. And he was making assumptions about the fact that by virtue of asking a question, he assumed that we were angry with him. And Wanda's like, it's okay for me to be angry about not being able to see. It's okay for me to be angry about that. And but I left there just shaking my head that our questions, just basic questions that are direct, that intimidating. What do you think, Christine?
So my experience is this, that when people react negatively to a basic question that is not put forward in a way that I would see as mean or unkind or with intentional malice, right? It might be firm, right? It might be
direct,
really direct,
yeah,
right? But I find that when people react negatively to that, one, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. That reaction is all about them and some fear that they have that I don't understand. And so for me, part of using questions, and part of why I, as a professional negotiator, prefer to show vulnerability in a negotiation, is to invite my counterparts to be vulnerable at the same time. So I actually might adopt that fear and talk about my fear, right? To say, in that situation, I am terrified right now. Like, I couldn't see very well before, but now I can't see anything there, and I am completely and utterly helpless. And right, focusing on my fear so then I can get them to talk about their fear, because I'm sure he's thinking that he's got a fear of failure, a fear of lawsuit, a fear of repercussions from his bosses. If he's only in his 30s, he's still working on becoming a full-fledged doctor. This could cost him that, right? So there are a lot of different factors that feed into that. And I find that to be absolutely the case in business situations. People, they don't respond negatively when they're not in a fear place, in a place of fear. And so I, as the questioner, need to give them the space to explore what that is and to help them to try to find a label to put to it. Because once they can label it, once I give them the ability to label it, then they are generally off to the races and things have calmed down and we're able to move forward.
Interesting. Jeremy, you looked like you were kind of resonating with what Christine was saying. Can you share what's going on for you?
First of all, I feel super grateful for this opportunity because I feel like when I listen to a lot of data, I try to cognate and, cogitate or whatever you want to call it. And my brain doesn't really work that way. So when I actually get a chance to repeat back what I understand, it's very helpful. So I just feel like while this may not be the subject matter we were covering, we are talking about this situation that you're mentioning, Patty. And I totally agree with Christine. And a couple of things came up. And one is that I've heard it said that people always have a reason. They always have their reasons. And I was also reminded of how well Brene Brown helped delineate the differences between empathy and sympathy, thereby helping people better understand empathy, because you're learning to lean into, like walk a mile in someone's shoes or to find a way to see someone's perspective. And I immediately knew what was going on with that doctor. It was like I heard you speak to some sort of, whether you want to call it an incredulity or just a sense of like, why is he this? But what I
was
already
just
knew,
surprised. I was just completely taken
right. And I really
unaware.
wanted
It
to
was like,
paraphrase
really,
you
this is where we're
carefully.
going.
Exactly.
Really?
So, but I understood your surprise, but I just as well understood his perspective, because his job is to be a doctor. And what do doctors do? They perform miracles on the human body. They spend thousands of dollars in school. They are revered above all in the food chain. And we all know that's bullshit, but them. Because when they were little children, if their parents were like, tiger whatevers, or they leaned into them because you're either going to be a doctor or a lawyer because that's what we do, whatever it is, like pick your paradigm. But the fact is that like doctors are, given this sort of air, this quality that like has them in a position where they're not taught how to kind of reconcile with when things don't go well. So if he's in a situation where he's being taken a task with someone who's immediately impacted by, and talk about doctors, surgeons are like, there's this book called Bonfire of the Vanities, and they talked about this concept of masters of the universe. So if you want to talk about the food chain of doctors, surgeons are at the top. Yeah. So all I'm saying, maybe I'm getting a little long-winded, so forgive me, but what I'm saying is that like, he was on the defensive before he got in the room, and he didn't even know how to conduct himself. So it didn't matter what was said. The fact is, I'm beyond myself because I performed surgery on this woman's eyes and she can't see, and there's nothing I can say about it, but I have to conduct in a social manner with people, and I have nothing. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do, and I can't even articulate that. So as Christine said, he's just in fear because he's a surgeon. You can't do anything with your hands at that moment. So, so I just want to stop and read what Christine said because maybe this will cause
she
me
says,
to
I find
it.
this to be a general issue to everyone. How we react is specific to ourselves and the situation.
Right. And just to go
Well
back
said,
to the
Christine.
first thing I'm sorry. To just finish with the first thing I said is that people have their reasons. And, I think what I'm picking up about what Blair said is that like, we didn't know what the doctor was thinking. So how do we do that in the construct of the cement guy and the R&M guy and all that?
Yeah, Blair?
Hi. Okay, I've got an answer for that. So what are we witnessing here? The R&M guy, what did he do? He was a situation, people, and then the doctor, and you, Patty, the situation, the person, the doctor. What Christine was sharing about and what Jeremy is sharing about, it's always the situation and the person. There was no process.
Right.
We didn't get to a full-blown process. Christine's stuff came the closest, but it didn't define a process. And one of the things that I've done in these kinds of scenarios is like when I went back into the office with Robert afterwards, I asked him, what was the difference between what I did and what you did for the last 2 weeks, Robert? And he said, well, Blair, you were asking questions just like you told me, like I should have been doing in the first place. Well, yeah. And I said, yeah, that's true, but there's something bigger here going on. What did my questions elicit? What did they get started here? And it comes down to, I started a process. And if you recall, I asked questions that almost immediately led to actions, led to a flow of connecting dots to get a change happening. And that connection, because the mind model here that I'm bringing in is precision questioning, but precision questioning always has to have a direction. And if precision questioning is to assign blame, then stay with the situation people loop. You will get very clear at who you want to blame, and so will the other party or parties. But you won't get anywhere and it won't resolve. Almost 100% predictable. So until people make mistakes and they actually get into a process by accident, or you can do it intentionally. And so what I do is I hang back and I just wait till people have, well, in Robert's case, 2 weeks was enough rope for him to hang himself, as I say. But what I wind up doing then is connecting the dots for him after the fact so he doesn't ever have to go through that again. And that means asking those precision questions with a purpose. And that purpose is process. What's the process?
So curiosity in asking the questions,
Yep.
would you say that's like a shortcut or a fast way to get to process? Because
Not
questions are not the
necessarily.
process in and of themselves.
You're correct. It isn't. We need to tease out process from that. But one of the things that we need to do is, yes, we need to be curious, but the curiosity needs to be balanced between the parties and the situation.
Mm.
So we have to uncover the process from the situation and from the people, because sometimes we have people that do not have the skills that the process requires.
Mm.
And if that is the case,
Would you
then
say that's what happened with your manager at the concrete block company, was that he didn't have the skills?
yeah, he didn't have, well, he did eventually because I was training him in mind models. And initially he didn't think it was important to learn the mind models that much. He thought, oh, it's great for everybody else, but I'm okay. And until that happened. And that really solidified it for him. And you know, the old saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Well, he was pretty puffed up on himself. So he had pretty big expectations. But then I'm this guy that did not know, did not have an engineering degree, did not know how to create or make concrete blocks, did not know anything about this except how to ask questions and to be curious and know to get them to be precision questions. Go ahead, Shane.
How long was Robert the manager before you started mentoring them?
He was a manager about 90 days or maybe 120 days. I was party of the hiring process. Ed Con was going through an issue back then, and they had a corporate culture of fear. And so I needed with that group to change the corporate culture. That's what I was engaged with.
Well, it seemed like he didn't have the process to begin with when he came in to know, his PEN guide, like you have the authority, responsibility, and accountability to get this stuff done. I'm just making the assumption that that you can do that, but the conversation or the specific dialogue wasn't there to keep things going in the right direction, I guess.
Well, the problem is that he has all the technical knowledge and skills, way more than I ever had or will have. Okay, so he's got the knowledge, he's got the capacity, he's been in a similar position. He just didn't ask the questions to figure out how to pull it together and make it work. So precision questioning did not enable us to get down to the root cause and what the problem actually was.
So Blair, this is a generality, but can we say that root cause is frequently, usually, always, not sure where, root cause is always some sort of failure in process?
Yes. Well, no, root cause is root cause. And
Okay.
so
Can you help me understand that then? Because
okay.
we're focusing a lot on process.
Well, because we're analyzing breakdowns where things did not work as expected.
Mhm.
So when we analyze breakdown and things are not working as expected, we need to find out where that went off the rails.
Mm.
how far along the path, how far along the path was it working? Like, when did it stop? Where did it stop? One of the things that I love about, I watch a lot of, um, SpaceX stuff because it is a masterful demonstration of testing an idea to failure. Like, most people do not think in business that they're testing ideas to failure, but they usually are, especially in interpersonal relationships and communication. And in relationships, you are constantly testing the process to a point where it fails or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, you stay married. And if it does, you get a divorce. So that's one of the failure points. Well, what is the cause of those failure points? Do you understand what that relationship might be? And when you're in business, it's is emotional, but it's usually a little less emotional than when I used to do marriage counseling. And I could see root cause in marriage counseling, and root cause can also be within a person. I have root cause issues that I have to learn how to deal with or find alternatives to get around things for myself personally.
So Blair, with yourself for root cause,
Yeah.
do you use the same process as we'd use with the situation and the groups? Or is there a slight variation
It's
to
not the
deal with
group.
yourself? Because how do you identify your own gaps?
Yeah, well, it's not that tough when you can ask yourself a simple question. Is what you're doing effective?
Okay.
And that's the first of the three E's mind model stack, effective versus ineffective. Are you getting the results you want? And the answer is no, I'm not. What might you do differently? I don't know, but I'm going to throw mud up against the wall and see what sticks, what may work. Or I can find somebody else who may have that expertise in an area that I don't have, that I need for my business, for me, for a perspective. And that's how come people hire me, because they don't have the perspective of what's getting in their own way. And I can usually source that out fairly easy. Now, it's hard to do that on yourself, but it's not impossible. You
I was
can
gonna-
I was going to say I see you nodding, and would you share what's going on for you?
Well, I was just thinking when you're working with yourself,
Yeah.
you can't necessarily, you can't see your own blind spots. You can't, and there's a sense of you don't know what you don't know going on. And so really it's about externalizing. It's about having somebody else to bounce things off, to see those blind spots that you don't see in yourself. You can ask yourself a bunch of questions and that can get the process going, but you're not necessarily when it's just you and you're asking yourself questions, to Blair's point, it can be very difficult to see those areas. Whereas if you have somebody who is, an expert in the field or the thing that you're attempting to fit, or, you're
Hmm, got some connectivity process issues there, Tim. You're frozen.
breaking up badly, Tim.
oh, bummer.
I think you're back.
Back yet?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you're
Okay.
back. Okay.
Just sharing that a lot of times we can't see our blind spots. We don't know what we don't know. And so finding somebody who, if we have a desired result, finding somebody who is experienced in that and has been there or can help us bounce those questions back and forth and see what it is that we don't see. And so reaching outside of ourselves a lot of times helps that process move along a lot faster. 'Cause one of the things that I got from Blair's story is, you know, when we were talking earlier about general to specific, you can ask yourself, you can take things from a very general, fuzzy idea and ask those specific questions. And that's a great starting point, is getting to the specific points, but it's also that process flow of, okay, I asked, you know, general to a specific. Now, you know, what needs to happen for that to move forward, going to either the person or the part or whatever that needs to be done, and then asking the next question. It's about the process of questioning that
So-
gets us to that.
So you have flow.
Right. So that you have the process flow to get to your desired result. It's about that process, and difficult to do with yourself when it's just you asking the questions. You can get from general to specific, but that process flow is tough. Is
One
where
of the
my head.
things, yeah, one of the things that I'm finding, and this has just been in the last 6 weeks actually, AI, you know, using ChatGPT and asking ChatGPT about something that I want to do in terms of marketing, which is my Achilles heel. Okay. And what I wind up getting is information that ChatGPT will actually give me information about where I'm gapped out.
Mhm.
And go, oh, you didn't consider this, 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 and this. And then I say, well, write me a comprehensive plan, marketing plan to put this to, and it does. And so I can now see, oh, geez, about 2/3 of this I didn't have a clear idea about. Okay, so it's getting easier to catch yourself if you're interested in figuring it out.
Hey,
One of
Blair. Yeah, I wanted to just ask something. Tim mentioned process flow, and that brings me back to something you were saying earlier about precision questioning leading, always having a direction leading to action. Would it be fair to say that precision questioning functionally moves from what into how? Like we're at the end of that process, the only way to answer the question is through behavior?
Yes, always. I mean, if you want to have success in life at any time, you know, the success formula is always who, what, how. Who is you, generally, almost always, like 99% of the time it's you. The first what is the historical what. What did you do? What did you try? What did you attempt? Then from that, now I can write down those things and ask GPT, what am I missing? And it'll tell me. So it now, and then I ask for a complete action plan, which is the second what. People think that that's the how you do it, but it's not. It's an action plan. It's a list of steps to take, not doing the steps, and then you do it. And all of a sudden, everything changes. That's strange, but that's true. You know, and even without ChatGPT, you do the same thing and you just ask, you know, a half a dozen people around you, or even 2 or 3 is enough frequently, and you get filled in on your gaps. You know, if they're trusted sources, or you come to the Blair Dunkley experience and you ask questions and you say, well, what about this? And then we fill you in, or with our ideas, or can I have some feedback? And I go, yeah, sure, of course. And you get ideas and you try those out. But it's always ends with an action. Always. If there is
Jeremy,
no
did you have a
action,
question or
there is no
comment?
process.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to be mindful of the container and the space, but like something that keeps, you know, echoing in my head, especially, you know, where we were with the doctor and Christine and the banker and what Christine said about, you know, how we react. Like I'm just thinking about how interpersonal dynamics to me seemed more relevant to all of this than anything else. Because, you know, if I can't talk to Robert in the way that Robert needs to hear it, and I can't talk to the doctor or the banker, none of this to me, like, you know, it is the sizzle in the steak, because I know what I know about my own psychology, and I know that the more I know about myself, the more that I can, again, empathize with someone else. But if I'm expecting Robert, you know, to burn out after 2 weeks of trying to do it his way, instead of saying, how can I befriend Robert? How can I speak to the banker and say, I know you're nervous, but we have to close this contract tomorrow. What's going on with this definition? Or the doctor, you know, listen, I'm going to bring this woman in here that can't see. Are you ready to talk to her? Because that's what we're going to do. You know, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I just feel like how we relate to each other is so much more important than anything. At least that's been my life experience.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. On a practical level, not everyone is accessible to that. I can tell you that the doctor would never be accessible for any pre-conversation ever. That would just never happen. But I think that conducting ourselves with care and concern for others is really very key to building effective relationships where you can have those kinds of conversations and get a measure of transparency. So I think your point is well taken. Part of what you're also talking about that is common between the relationship aspect that you're bringing up and the process aspect that Blair is talking about frequently with situations and working those through is where's the information and how is it flowing? And if the information is getting blocked at some point, then finding that block is going to get you much closer to your root cause. So, yeah, Jackie, that the doctor is never going to be available. That's not just a limiting belief. That is based on decades of experience. So,
Which is
surgeons,
also a limiting belief.
I
because-
suppose so. Okay, I'll own it
Yeah.
as a limiting belief with decades of experience. So,
Yes.
decades of supporting evidence and experience. Just
Yes.
saying.
Absolutely.
So,
Still a limiting belief.
you're
Because
right.
may not be, because that can be the generalities, but it's not necessarily the specifics of that person. Christine.
That is true. Go with Christine.
Yeah, I just want to kind of reflect on what Jeremy said, if that's okay, Jeremy. Awesome, thank you. So I've done a lot of international negotiations, like negotiated in 55 countries. And one of the things that I learned, and Blair, this is also connecting to what you said, or at least I'm going to attempt that. So when I'm sitting across the table from somebody not from my culture, let's say I'm in Indonesia. I am a Montana country girl who grew up riding horses, branding cattle, you know, spitting, chewing tobacco on the back of a pickup truck, doing all that kind of stuff. And I can be in primarily Muslim Indonesia. And my ability to create empathy with them at a human level is not easy to start with. But where I can build empathy is on a process level. And the way that I do that is that people have written tomes, massive books. There are college courses about how to negotiate with the Japanese and how to negotiate with the Chinese. And you know what I found is different from one country to another country? Their process. And just their process. It is, where do I sit? Where do I bow? How do contracts move through the company? Who has authority? Who doesn't have authority? It has nothing to do with the people thing. The people side is the same every country I've ever been in and ever negotiated with, but the process changes all the time. And so that was the first time, Blair, that I connected that process part. So I hope that brought it together, but at least it did in my own head. So I guess that's all that came out.
Well, that works. We got 1 out of 1 there.
Well, Blair, you had mentioned once that the question concepts were something that cross-cultural boundaries.
There's over 7,000 languages, and back in the day, I checked 6,000 of them with experts, and the question concepts are fundamentally the same in all 6,000 languages that I checked back then, but updating recently and figuring out. And that doesn't include dialects, because if you include dialects, there's even more. But the way we organize our thought through questions, the who, what, where, when, why, and how, exist in all languages. And those, although the words don't, like pourquoi, why in French. There's a why in English, well, why in French. There's a why in every language, there's a what in every language, there's a who. In every language, there's all of those 6. And that's the cool thing about this, is that we can create documentary evidence and people evidence of how people respond and react. And we can connect dots with that. And when we do, we can build and get to the situation, the people, and know that whatever we need to change, the root cause of it has to get down to actions and the process. And what Christine is talking about is the protocol of those actions. Where do people sit? Where's that pecking order? All of that is part of the process, because that acknowledges people's hierarchical needs. That acknowledges their status in that communication, if necessary. But all of these things are always to take care of people, but it's process that will engender the change. So we can try and understand where somebody is to the best of our ability, but we cannot, I mean, I've been in marriage counseling situations where both parties understand and they get divorced. How come? Because their direction of where they want to go in life is no longer the same. They wanted both parties each other to come along for the ride, but the other parties, both of them wanted to go in different directions. So it goes like this. The marriage goes like this for a while, and then it splits and goes like this. But neither party wanted the other one to go their own separate way. They wanted to do it together, but the other party did not want to join the other person on that direction. And so it ends. And that's understanding process. So it's unfortunate, but that is understanding the process of the end of a marriage in that case. Now, we also have the start of a relationship, which is another process of clarifying. And again, it's situation and people. And if we don't figure out the process, the flow, the things to do, everything breaks down. I definitely know that that was an issue in my relationship with Lori when I was very sick. Because we've now celebrated just recently our 2nd year anniversary together. And yay, 2 years. I'm very proud of that. And one of those 2 years was a very tough one for Lori and myself. I had to go through it. I was sick. So I was not doing well. Lori had an option. She did not have to come along for the ride. She could have opted out, but she decided to join me in my journey. Thank you for the star. I appreciate that. And
It was supposed to float, but I didn't get there. So
okay, that's the other one. Okay, but at the end of the day, it works. Now I'm getting remarkably better. I can do things that I couldn't do and before during that year. And now I'm just got one more hurdle to jump over, and that's getting hip replacement because the radiation proctitis that I got and the radiation for prostate cancer, clear on the prostate cancer front, but the radiation demineralized my joints in my hips, and my bones broke down faster. So I had accelerated osteoporosis,
Yeah.
whatever. You guys know what I mean. Anyways, but I'm getting hip replacements as a result, which my doctor's had 3 hip replacements. He doesn't have 3 hips, but it was weird when he said it. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, youngish man with 2 hip replacements, and one of the 2 replaced twice. So good outcomes with that, by the way, really good outcomes. So I'm excited about that. Anyway, that's sort of where that is.
Okay, well, we're just about at a place to wrap up. Does
I think so,
anybody
too.
have any parting comments before we do? Questions? Colin, do you want to take us through the wrap up?
I'd love to. Thank you, Patty. Well, I think everyone has been here before, but Christine, I know it's been a while, so just in case, catch up is helpful for the wrap up. Basically, what's one takeaway for you, and just putting a number on the value that you received tonight, 1 to 10. Christine, would you be willing to lead us off?
Sure. I mean, I'm just glad to be back. It's
Yeah,
just I
welcome
don't
back.
get to come up very often, so it's nice to see everybody. I always walk away with something new and interesting. And Jeremy, I liked your questions a lot, and Tim and Becky, you guys always add a lot of insights, and I just always really enjoy hearing what you guys have to say and how you guys approach things. Yeah, it's just very cool. So it's a great honor to be here tonight. And so I always give, when I get to pop in now, you always get a 10 out of me.
Yeah,
Right.
I love you being here. That's how come I pop those hearts.
Yeah, welcome back, Christine. Thank you. Brent, I know you're off camera. Would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Tonight,
Oh,
no. It's
okay.
gonna be rare tonight. No, I popped in halfway through. Was still a little confused. I'd have to go back and watch. I'm not sure on what I got. So
No problem. Yeah, glad you were here anyway. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Jackie, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight? I think you're still. Oh, there we go. Unmuted.
6 out of 10 tonight.
Okay.
I found that one thing that if I need to know how come I'm not being affected in my life is like by asking questions and also seeing like what is it that I want to do or where I want to be, and what am I doing that is getting in the way, and what am I doing that's not being effective. I mean, they're kind of the same questions, but I find it opens up a different list of possibilities.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Leslie, is Leslie still here?
I am still here, but I cut my video because it's jumping all over the place for some reason tonight.
Yeah, I saw you turning red halfway through the like your camera just shifted
I
red.
wasn't blushing.
Yeah, got it. Would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's I'm giving tonight a 10. This I know I didn't get to offer much during the discussion, but I identified with everything that was going on tonight. This whole thing of asking questions and well, I wrote this down partway through the evening, and that is from my 50 years of plus of construction management, I often tried to remedy my situation by questioning the process and without regard of any person.
Mhm.
And you can imagine how much doo-doo that got me in many times.
Yep.
And I just didn't care about the other person on a lot of the times because, darn it, I had to get something built. And so that's a realization.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, there's always three parts to that: situation, people, and process. You cannot separate those into just jamming it all into process. So it's got to be a balance between the situation, the people, but you cannot ignore the process. That's all I'm saying.
One thing that also kept coming back to me early on in this, and I was looking for it. I've got it here somewhere, but I just couldn't find it. And that is something that I have referred to and shared with people in trying to get situations resolved. And that is, I had this piece of paper which had 4 items on it, and it was called the classification of errors. And it's on a piece of paper, so they didn't always have to remember it, but it was like using the wrong basis or using irrelevant information. I did do a search online here, and it came up with a lot more than the 4, but these 4 were synthesized all that concept of a classification of errors to down pretty good to be able to rectify a process or to find out where in a process it wasn't working. What caused the error? What caused me my grief in getting something built? But I will look for that, and hopefully I can share that next week. I'll have it handy. But it was a 10, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Blair, did you want to jump in again? I saw you kind of.
No,
wanna do-
just,
okay.
I was going to say thank you, Leslie. That's it. So,
Jeremy, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
I would. I do want to say that I am intimidated and challenged or confronted by numbers in terms of like rating.
you don't
I'm
have
on a
to.
okay. I'm on a journey of healing around learning, so I felt really good about tonight. I felt like I got a lot out of it, and I felt welcome to participate, and that's really important to me. As far as the content, like I think I remember saying the first time I came here a few weeks ago, like I'm just not clear about what's happening. And so I'm just grateful to be engaged and participating and finding myself able to concentrate mostly. And even still, like when I don't get something, like Patty had called upon me twice at moments where like I got to actually express what I did understand, which might be what they like to call now neurodivergent to what everybody else was talking about. But like that's how I learn is, how does it make sense to me in my own psychology? So if I give myself a rating, I'll give myself an 8, but it feels too scary to talk about it any other way. Thank you.
I love the way that you rated yourself. That's what it's all about. Okay, seriously. And if you want to give us a rating or don't, it's all okay here. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Shane, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Sure. Another couple pages of notes again. I know it's a foundational building block of Blair's, but the threes, it's funny how everything kind of leads back to those mind model stacks. I find that very fascinating. The questions lead into a direction or start the process. And then I'll reiterate on what Jackie said about, are you getting the results you want? And, what might you do differently? So 9 for me tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shane. I saw Shannon on earlier, but off mic and camera. Is she still here? Looks
No,
like
No,
no.
she put something in the chat. She gave it a
Okay.
7 for tonight. She had to leave early.
Got it. Thank you, Patty.
Can I just ask, was Shannon ever on camera? Because I feel like I only knew she was existing until I saw that in the chat. So was she here?
I
She
don't
was
think
not
so.
on camera tonight. She was
Okay.
she was off like Brent.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shannon. Even though you're not here, I'm glad you were here. For me, tonight was 7.5, mostly just because I'm having trouble staying awake. I've just had a mentally fatiguing day, but nothing to the group. Group is wonderful as always. Um, I think the main takeaway for me was just the concept of precision questioning always ending in action. That was a helpful realization for me. Tim, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
For sure. Thanks, Colin. One of the biggest takeaways, I guess, for me tonight, and Christine touched on it, Jeremy touched on it, Leslie touched on it there at the end. So, which I just thought was awesome, was the whole situation people process, and keeping in mind that all three of those are part of that process. Christine talked about it when she does her negotiations and going to different countries and stuff like that. Like she looking at the cultures and the people involved and those kinds of things and just how important that is. And Jeremy mentioned it when he brought it up with the doctor, and talking about whether that doctor is going to be involved or not, and that alignment piece that comes with that. And like and Leslie mentioned it there at the end too, with his construction background and stuff. He's forgetting about the people. Like I guess that was just the one big takeaway for me tonight, is that there is the situations, there's the people involved, and then the process within the situation and the people, and about taking action, owning your part, and moving forward. And that's what makes the magic happen. It really, in precision questioning and in all of this, and taking that action, as you mentioned, Colin, moving forward, that's where the magic is in that situation, the people involved in the process. So just a big takeaway from, that's the biggest thing, connection piece for me, a 9 for tonight.
Thank you, Tim. Becky, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Sure. So we've talked about it, and Tim just about stole what I was going to say. I'm like listening. It's coming. In all of this, the thing that kept coming up for me in the communication part is our role. How are we engaging specifically? What is our process within the process, people and others? Because that's really where the influence comes from. How we choose to engage, the level of accountability, responsibility, and authority we give ourselves to be able to engage within an appropriate manner, depending, on what we're talking about, to be able to influence, because that's really where the power is. In communication, it's nonverbal, yes, is a huge part of it. But if you're engaging in a group dynamic or an individual dynamic, you got to own and be clear on your process. How do you engage in a group setting? How do you engage in a one-on-one? What is your process within the people, situation, and process that you're working with? And so just bringing it back, to mention is like, what is your part? Have you owned it? And are you clear on what that looks like so that you can evaluate effectively, what is working about this for me? What's not? What part of that is mine? So that you can then engage. So 9 for me tonight. Thank
And
you.
that's where what you shared, Jeremy, at the end there was very powerful. So it's looking at what you got and your part in it, and owning it. And that was, so just wanted to point that out. That was awesome.
Yeah, nice connection. Thank you, Becky. Patty, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts tonight. I want to give a shout out for neurodivergence, just like Christine is talking about, and Jeremy. I gained so much from neurodivergent brains. I'm not sure I'd go as far as wishing I had one, but I have so many people in my world with a neurodivergent brain that I have just come to find they add color and life to my world. So thank you for sharing your neurodivergent perspectives. Jackie, thanks for calling me out on my limiting belief. I was looking at that and thinking that part of root cause when you're looking at yourself is that internal versus external, and what is going on inside, and identifying that. And then how is that showing itself externally? And using a distorter word like never, if I were listening to myself, that would have been my key. I wasn't listening to myself though. So thank you, Jackie. And so yeah, that's true. And distorter words go back to general, they go back to whys, and they go back to an ineffective place. So thank you for keeping my process honest. It was a 9 for me tonight. Really grateful to have Tim and Becky back tonight. Colin, thanks for substituting for Jane with the stuff in the chat. Jeremy, I'm glad you're back and participating. We gain a lot from everybody's participation, and everybody makes the group what it is. Christine, it's always a joy to see you again. And Shane, give our best to Christy. Tell her she's missed. Okay. So that's what I've got.
Thank you, Patty. Blair, would you like to wrap up the wrap up?
Sure. So, for me tonight, I thought it was an 8.5 overall. I thought we did a very good job of figuring stuff out. I'm actually thrilled to see you, Christine. So thank you for showing up. You know, it's I was having a particularly rough day, just with technology and all. So it wasn't a great day for me. And that could be part of my 8.5 response here too. It's sort of like more on me than it is on the group or what happened here. Again, it's just recognizing my own limitations is something that I keep on getting confronted with, and I got confronted heavily. But seeing your face here, Christine, just perked me right up again. So thank you. And yeah, we need to catch up sometime. Jeremy, I really like your points of view and how you share here. So keep up the good work. You're a valued member of this collective group here going forward. And so it's highly effective. When I look at the whole thing of getting down to my takeaway tonight was getting back to me focusing on me making change and doing the behaviors. And when I don't know what to do differently, and the chat that I'm trying to utilize with a live person for the software that's screwing up is not, it's taking forever, then I get frustrated. And that was where I sort of came into the day with. So pardon me for my frustration carryover, but it was particularly very real for me at least. Anyway, I'm out of it now. And I wish you guys a great evening. By the way, if you're interested in, do you want to throw up the link again at all for the notes? And we have the insider notes is all of the notes that we're processing and putting together. So it's from 317 forward, we're on 320. So we have all of those notes are there specifically, and we will be getting them all for an entire year of notes, that the BDE notes. So those are rather handy, thorough, like they've got, in some cases, stories We're between 5 and 14 pages long, depending on the week, of thorough note-taking for you that you can consume at your leisure and go back and start figuring out, okay, how does this stuff work? Where did we go with this? What might we do differently? And if you have questions, that is one of the best places to go. Jeremy, I believe you were checking out with Colin to get let into the Blair Dunkley experience on Facebook. Is that accurate? Yes.
Yeah, just because when we first spoke about this group, Colin had mentioned that he was in a video that kind of like was his genesis, and it just felt meaningful to me to kind of experience that because I've known Colin for under a year, but this was, I think, in 2020, if I remember him explaining it. So it just would give me some great context.
You know what? I would love to get you into that, but Facebook in its infinite wisdom has blocked me from my own account. And not because of ads, not because of anything other than I lost, when I got a new cell phone, my authenticator did not transfer over everything. One of my authenticators did not transfer over everything to authenticate. So I lost Facebook authentication, and it requires me to do to whatever, double authentication with an authenticator. And that was a bit of a problem for me. Anyway, I will see if I can't have my VA. She can get in, and there's numerous other people that can get in to my account, but I can't get into my own account. So I'm sorry. That's part of the reason that I've moved to YouTube. So less of an issue with that. Okay, with that said, hey guys, I wish you well. Enjoy, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.